by the government. But when we look at public health and when we look at the fact that we can do this, if we set our mind to it, we can have an emergency response that works. Government hospitals can turn out to be the main warriors in this battle. Why can't we do this for other disease? Why is it the health secretary's statement saying, don't worry because infant mortality is higher, I think offended many people, including myself, when he said, how can you compare and say it's all right, they die of this, why don't you worry about that and don't worry about this? Why can't we have the same focus on other public disease in India?
Yeah, actually, if you look and see that our health budget is 1% of the GDP, which is really pipsqueaky, too tiny. And like recommendation would be 5%, and Mudaliar committee has even said 10%. So with the investment in health being very, very little, our public health system in the larger like primary health centers and all, it's not as, in equipment wise and in terms of, the doctors and the nurses and lab technicians who should be in place. And if you see that the deaths that we have from tuberculosis, malaria, and also like everyone knows malnutrition.
Cancer.
Like 46% of our children being malnourished, 1/3 of our newborn babies being birth weight babies. These are most vulnerable because the immune system, etc., is obviously compromised. So from diarrhea to acute respiratory infection. And if it was really felt that health and education are a priority, I'm sure the government could do it. And like, for example,
yes,
like school health programs, you don't have to tell now when the H1N1 breaks out how to cough and how to sneeze and how to wash your hands. This should have been very much an integral part of the school health programs, where the children should know even like what your lungs are like and like diarrhea, how to make ORS. This should be very much part and parcel of the school.
So much of that emergency response that we're seeing this time, we may not have seen it if health was given more priority in India. And in fact, if politicians gave it, because sadly the health ministry is always seen as not a ministry of choice. It's something to accommodate, or somebody loses out in the political stakes that they get the health ministry. Let me just bring in Dr. Khushraf Bajan of Hinduja Hospital, Mumbai, of course, a private hospital. Have you seen these contradictions arise? As I said, many have been pleasantly surprised with how well the government health system has handled swine flu, but others raising more fundamental questions of what does this say about India's health structure in general? Your view, sir?
Definitely we have not seen any swine flu cases as of now in Hinduja admitted, but definitely the fear is rising, and we should not lay only focus at the moment. Yes, it is the need of the hour, but our focus should not be only on swine flu, because we see a lot of cases being a tertiary center and all over India. We see a lot of cases of malaria, not necessarily cerebral malaria, but even the so-called minor vivax malaria causing a lot of these critical multi-organ failure diseases and so on and so forth. So we should have this vigil not only for swine flu, but also for the other diseases.
Dr. Preeti Kumar, as a public health specialist, what do you think are the lessons that have to be learned? Why is it acceptable that children die of malaria? And when we know that, I mean, it's a simple pesticide, DDT, it's a simple issue like washing your hands, hygiene. Why is that somehow acceptable, and why is the response to swine flu so different? I mean, the critics would say that perhaps it's because it's affected the middle class. They have a voice. They are the ones who can come on television. The poor people in Bihar don't have a voice.
To some extent, what you're saying is right, that issues that catch the public imagination, that capture the media's attention, generally get highlighted, and probably there is a response to that also, which has its own advantages. However, in the larger context of the disease burden within the country, in the context of poor health systems which are unable to cope up even with routine work, this issue becomes extremely important, and it highlights the vulnerability of the health system as it exists. So our response then becomes disease specific. It attacks the particular disease that becomes the focus of people attention, public attention and media attention. But however, the underlying problems and the weaknesses of a health system get neglected. And all the other diseases that the health system could have actually handled are neglected again.
Right, so that's a good point to make, that if you had a more structured, solid health system in place, not just swine flu, it could actually work for other diseases. Let's not make our whole response swine flu specific. I'm going to take a quick break now, but we'll look at more on this aspect right after that. Welcome back. Our focus on Verdict tonight as we look at the human tragedy of 7 deaths because of swine flu. We also look at the larger medical system, the government in overdrive to tackle swine flu. But how do we make sure that this is extended to a lasting change in public health, not just for swine flu, but other diseases like malaria and tuberculosis? My panel is with me, including Dr. Katoch, Director General of the Indian Council of Medical Research. Dr. Katoch, how would you assess our response to swine flu, especially compared to other diseases? It seems to have been exemplary in comparison.
I think I feel very proud of this fact. You know, the way we responded from the day one, and we are perhaps the only country in the world which could really contain it for such a long time, imagining such a huge number coming, and the people have supported by and large. So I think that way the response should be that we have made a very good response, but we are strengthening it today also. And I mean, I would like to defend anything, but those are the issues, you know, those comments when you talk of the death suckling due to other things, yes, is also a fact.
But Dr. Katoch, why don't we have the same kind of emergency response to other medical killers, as it were, like malaria, like tuberculosis? Why doesn't public health give that same focus?
That's I think that's what, you know, that's what that those officials were also trying to point out. I was there in their press conference.
Yes.
And our reaction was, you know, that for a 1 or 2, 3, 4 deaths, though it is galvanizing public into more action, is certainly fine. And even if today we would like to save every last person, you know, as a doctor, as an administrator, I will not like a single life to be lost, you know.
Of course.
But the truth remains, you know, that I mean the other health actually priorities also should not be ignored. I mean, I don't certainly there is no defense.
No defense to that, Dr. Wali. Let me ask you again. When I talked about government hospitals and the focus, government hospitals always get at the receiving end. Nobody who can afford it will go to a government hospital. Have you found that has changed? That in fact after poor Rida's death, it's government hospitals have emerged as the heroes and government doctors as the heroes of this whole swine flu outbreak?
It's not the concept of becoming a hero for a short-term basis. We are a dedicated team of experts, genuinely spending our might to treat people, to become part of their problems. And we have our own ways to address to their issues, which is a very selfless way of doing it, and that is how we can succeed.
Right.
Your first part, I would like to add that I will give you an example of malaria. If in a remote village there is a concept that a person falling sick, unconscious due to cerebral malaria, it is a Davi Prakop, or it's a Jadoo, or it is to be treated by an Ojha, how would the poor man come to a doctor and get the benefit of chloroquine or quinine being treated in the hospital? So it is two things. In mortality also, I would be defending my secretary by saying that level of education in people is very low at places. In Kerala, you would not find that phenomena, while in the less, I would not name the state, less educated states, you would find the same phenomena just upside down. And this is the root cause. Education, population explosion. These are the two things which are diluting all the progress which we are going to make. Any kind of
health response we can make. Let me go across Dr. Bajan of the Hinduja hospital. When we look at private hospitals, and you know that 80% of healthcare, and that's actually a commentary I think on our public health system, 80% of healthcare today comes from the private sector. Now diseases like malaria, TB are diseases which are seen amongst poorer people. They don't have access to this 80% of healthcare in the private sector. How do doctors like yourself deal with this dichotomy?
That's a misconception. There are a lot of patients of malaria, even from the poor strata. They are referred to the private hospitals when they are really sick and in multi-organ failure, because all over the concepts are that public hospitals may not have that many ventilators and the acumen to actually treat multi-organ failure, ARDS, etc. Right. So we do see a lot of these cases in private sector as well. We definitely have a much higher incidence of malaria cases. Not only malaria, why not talk about viral encephalitis? Why not talk about acute gastroenteritis? Each one of this can finally lead to a kind of multi-organ failure. So we do see a big spectrum of diseases, and therefore we can tackle these with taking it as a challenge.
Right. Dr. Shiva, very quickly, we're almost at the end of the show. Your final words on this. Nobody's saying that there should not be an emergency response to swine flu, but do you think this will lead to a larger awakening on disease in India?
Definitely. I think one of the things that becomes very clear, that once people know what to do, they will do. People love their loved one. What to do for diarrhea, what to do for respiratory infection, what to do for malaria. But again, health literacy is low. Rational use of drugs, the concept has to be dealt with earlier. You cannot, antibiotic resistance, etc., has to be dealt with earlier, not at the time of crisis.
And we don't actually need drugs often for so many of
Yes.
these killer diseases. Dr. Preeti Kumar, last words from you quickly.
I think that this is very unfortunate that we have the H1N1 epidemic, not an epidemic, apologies, the outbreak. However, this is the exact time when we should be questioning and this is the time when we can actually raise the very valid debate that why should we have a disease-specific reaction of our government systems and our health system responses, and
Right.
why not a system that is ready and that is capable of addressing all the infectious diseases that we are actually facing.
Exactly, not disease specific. I think that's the key point, and that's the question we asked you on Verdict tonight. Has the swine flu outbreak and our response to it actually exposed the laxity in which we deal with other diseases? Well, 87% of you say yes, 13% of you say no. The point is no death should be acceptable. Every death is an emergency, whether it's because of malaria or swine flu. That's it on Verdict, but keep watching NDTV for all the latest news updates. Goodbye.